Welcome to episode 20 of the Tailoring Talk show with me, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer and owner of Roberto Rivilla London suit and shirt makers. Each episode I talk to creators and entrepreneurs about their journey on the road to success, the highs and lows they've experienced and the lessons learned along the way. If you enjoy this episode, and indeed if you're enjoying Tailoring Talk in general, please give me some feedback in the form of a rating and a review. This really helps the show to grow its audience and helps new listeners to find us. Our regular listeners will know that I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to pop culture, and I'm super excited to introduce this week's guest. A freelance illustrator working mainly in the comics industry, he's penciled and inked for Omnibus Press, Walker Books and legendary comics houses Dark Horse and DC Comics. He was shortlisted for the Carnegie Greenaway Award for illustration for his work on the graphic novel Dark Satanic Mills. Marc Olivent, all the way from just up the road in Grimsby. How are you?
Terrific, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you.
Impressed you've done your homework on me there.
I always try to do my homework, but, you know, you and I, just trying to think when we first connected, it was probably during the referendum.
Gosh, was it?
Yeah, because I think we're both sort of kind of seem to be politically aligned on that side of things. Yeah. But, I can't remember. I mean, I know we've definitely been in each other's orbit for quite some time.
It may have been through, if you remember Ned Hartley, it may have been through sort of a discussion thread he got going on his Twitter that we collided. Oh
yeah, that's true. Actually, Ned would be a good guest. Sorry, I'm now already thinking of other guests, and I haven't even spoken to you yet. Now, firstly, I need to just get some advance apologies out of the way because we've got multiple things going on. We've got a gutter leak right in front of me. It's really bloody annoying. So what I've done is I've really quickly just shoved an umbrella outside the top window and sort of taped it up there to deflect the water away. So that's kind of going on right now.
Sounds like one of my long-term fixes, never mind a stopgap.
Yeah, we've got, it's absolutely hammering it down in London today. It's crazy. So I'm kind of glad that I'm not running around with suits and stuff today. I took
wild.
Yeah, I had to take a personal day anyway because my little Mini's got a crack in the windshield. They needed to come and fix it, but it's raining, so they've cancelled it. Right. Anyway, and then we've got building works going a couple doors down. Why they're quite working on what they're working on in this weather, I have got no idea.
Builders normally no excuse, do they, to pack it in for the day?
Oh my God, especially these ones. Like, they are awful. We were watching them from the garden the other day, and they've done some sort of brick detail wrong on the neighbour's extension. And have you ever seen 2001: The Space Odyssey?
Oh, a long time ago, yeah. And it was a long watch, yeah.
It was a boring film. But, I'm going to get people messaging me now saying, how dare you, it's a classic. Yeah, it's a classic, granted, but it's boring as hell. But the bit where the prehistoric man or apes or whatever learn to use tools for the first time, basically, that's those guys 2 doors down. Bless them. I hope they're not listening to it. They probably won't be. So that's going on as well. So I apologise in advance if there's any banging, etc., which then causes one of the various animals in the house to start growling, meowing, barking, and so on. There we go. So how are you? How are family doing? How have things been up in Grimsby?
Yeah, I mean, the weather's not really much better here, except for I was just going to say it's not raining, but I've just looked out the window and it now actually is raining. So it's
sorry about
that. We've had those few hot days. I don't know if you caught them down there. Did you?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, this past week
we had about a week of heat, and now it's reverted back to type, and here we are, grey and rain.
Yeah. So, what are you working on at the moment? Before I get into sort of past stuff.
Yeah, well, I've got a comic called The God Complex that I'm working on right now, which is I think it's going to be a 4-part serial. So I'm sort of halfway through the first book on that, so I've got a bit to go on that, and then I've got some Kickstarters to provide a bit of work for. which is going to interrupt the flow on the God Complex. But it's all work, so we can't turn it down, and we just keep mucking away, kind of thing. I get clients just pop up all the time, and can you just fix this, or can you just do me this? So it can interrupt the flow, but I hardly ever say no, just because you never know where the next one's going to come from. So currently a couple of things. One of which is more longer term, one of which is a short job.
How do you find work these days? Because look, for all intents and purposes, we're both freelancers, right? You draw and ink, and we'll get into the technical terms in a bit. And I create clothes for people. But at the end of the day, if people aren't coming to me wanting me to create things for them, then I've got no work, right? Which is the same for you.
Yeah, the money dries up.
Yeah, which is exactly the same for you as well. So, but in your kind of little part of the universe, how do you have a sort of regular network? Because I know there are some writers that you've done a bit of regular work for, or you've collaborated with various certain writers on different things. Again, some of which I really, really want to talk about. Sorry, I'll stop talking now so that you can actually answer my question.
No, that's all right. I was just listening. Well, you alluded to it already. Really, it's a bit different these days for me than to when I started out, because I've got those that like you say, a regular pool of clients who just keep coming back. They won't go away. I'll sort of be a few months with one client or longer, and that's normally enough time for someone else to creep out of the woodwork and announce book 2 or whatever it is that they want to have a go on. So it's short answer really, just a group of regular recurring clients who have come back. I've not had to go begging for work, for want of a better expression, online for a long time now, which is what I used to do. I used to sort of I still have members on websites that post freelance work. And they've got all different categories of work on there for design and fashion. There are even fashion jobs, and I sort of bid on illustration work. And eventually built up enough clients to have regular comic work coming in, kind of thing. That's really all there has been to it. Because
so how did you get started? Really, obviously you've got a God-given natural talent. I love your work. I was looking at some of the stuff you've done in more recent years with Jim McCarthy on his. He's got a series of graphic novels that are almost like biographies, like visual biographies of like famous bands and people. Yeah. Michael Jackson. He's done Guns N' Roses, one of my favourite rock bands. Yeah. He's done The Life and Death of Keith Moon was one of them. He's done a few, hasn't he? Kurt Cobain and so on. And you definitely did GNR and you did Keith Moon, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. They were for Omnibus Press, weren't they? And I think I don't know how that work came about for Jim, but he's got a sort of big music background. He's a drummer and a musician himself. And somehow he got involved with David Barraclough at Music Sales / Omnibus, and discussed doing graphic novels, music biography graphic novels. And how I got in touch with him was he announced that job on LinkedIn.
Oh wow!
So there's another sort of source of work. Really, I've had a few jobs come from there. He said he was just looking for an artist, and I was one of the artists who pitched my portfolio, and we went from there, kind of thing. He said he'd got a Guns N' Roses one on, and once we finished that, he said there's a Keith Moon one coming up. Do you want to do that one as well? And the rest is history, I guess. But Jim's another recurring client. You seem to. If you treat them well enough, they come back, kind of thing. So Jim's another regular, if you like. But he's an old 2000 AD alumni. He's done a lot of art and writing for them over the years, back in the 90s and into the early noughts, and has since moved into writing, I guess. Yeah. And I think he enjoys that more and finds it more rewarding. That's basically the story of how me and Jim met and continue to work together. Yeah.
And was it always comics for you? Because I imagine as a kid you were always drawing and doodling and stuff, and then obviously you get into, when you're in school and you're progressing, you kind of work out where your strengths are and your subjects that, because I was always more sort of art and designy than maths and all of that other stuff. So why comics for you?
Gosh, that's a good question. I kind of ask myself that a lot, and well, not a lot, but every now and again. And the only response to it I've got really is that when I was very young, I had an injury to my foot, so I wasn't out playing football with the guys as much as they were, as much as I wanted to be, and I ended up reading lots of comics. Basically, my mum would buy me lots of comics, and just fell in love with them, I guess, and ended up, when my foot was better, reading more comics and doing more comic-related artwork than I was playing football. Yeah. So that's really the only answer I've got for that. It's just that I just connected with comics so early, or rather early enough, for it to have a profound enough impact on me, as a young kid.
Yeah.
The old Spider-Man comics, Daredevil, and Batman, Superman. Those UK reprints that were around in the sort of early 80s. Just read enough of that. And I can remember going to the supermarket with my parents, and back in those days you could just go off on your own in the supermarket and there'd be no problem. And I'd just go straight to the comic stand and try and get all the reprints and pick which one I kind of like wanted at the time, and then just went and begged my mum to buy it for me, and then I'd just spend the next week just sat there reading it and trying to memorise the style of the artists I like Jim Aparo and Steve Ditko and all those guys, and just used to draw my own comics. I just really got heavily into it. I don't know if it's something that would have happened anyway if it wasn't for my thoughts. There's no way to tell. Yeah. But I just connected with it in a way that sort of defined who I've been now for 46 years,
Yeah, I mean, I find, so same as you, we must be a similar kind of age, because I remember early 80s, my dad, when he came back from work once a week, he, as a treat for me, I didn't get pocket money, but he would bring back a comic, and, it would be, a whole variety of stuff, either Superman, Batman, The Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man. When I was kind of old enough to get that these were sort of sequential, like there was a story going on and I needed to get the next one, then I was able to just take a little bit more control and get him to take me with him to the newsagents across the road. And back then, I mean, look, comics were what, like 12p, 15p? Yeah. And then I started going with, like, my mum and dad would take me to car boot sales, or sometimes they'd be doing car boot sales themselves. My wife, by the way, she has to get her every episode mention. She finds car boot sales like a totally fascinating thing in this country. She's just, she's never been, I don't think she's ever been to one, but she sees the signs for them, and I've obviously described what a car boot sale involves. Yeah. And she just finds it a completely alien but fascinating and sort of very sort of twee, quaint kind of.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. Yeah,
concept to this country.
Very British thing.
Yeah. But so they used to do car boot sales to make a little bit of money out of knickknacks and stuff that we didn't need. And obviously I'd then have the opportunity to go wander around, and you'd find people selling boxes of comics for a penny each or something. Yeah. And so I was able to just start amassing a huge collection of stuff. And then obviously you had your annuals as well, like the Beano and the Dandy, and annuals that were based on TV shows and that sort of thing, like the A-Team and all of that kind of illustrated stuff.
I remember them well, yeah.
But it was, for me, it was my favourite Marvel run was basically everything Todd McFarlane drew for Marvel when he did The Amazing Spider-Man back in the sort of late 80s. Yeah. And also most of the Batman stuff from that period. And then especially the Frank Miller novels as well, because it was all that very moody black and white kind of, all the illustrations on the characters' faces. You could see so much detail in expressions and so on, and facial structure, and, hands is something that is a real talent to draw. And the point of this is that I guess I'm kind of quite attracted to the illustrative work that you've done, because the way that you draw humans is amazing. Your illustrations just leap off the page. It's almost like
thank you.
That Aha video, the Take On Me one, where the kind of illustrations just come to life. Whenever I'm looking at anything that you've drawn, it almost feels like the picture's moving. And
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't start crying on me. I don't say things unless I really mean it.
Well, it's a good job you're not going to put the video feed on your podcast, because you'd see how red my face has just gone.
I want to give you blushing. I want to give you a hug. But it's true, and look, I've got an appreciation for it, and you should know that.
All right, thanks.
So, which brings me on to Dark Satanic Mills. So that was a bit. Well, no, you tell me about it, because you worked on it.
Well, that's a. It's Marcus and Julian Sedgwick, who I still see and talk to occasionally. I did a comic book and writing sort of workshop with a school in Lincolnshire recently. Not recently, a few years ago now. You say recently. Recently could mean anywhere in the last 10 years, can't it, these days?
Yeah.
But you sort of. 5 years ago with Julian down in Stamford. Had lunch with him and whatnot. But Marcus lives in France now, so I don't see or speak to him as much except through Twitter anymore. But yeah, they Marcus used to work at Walker Books, so he found. Pitching that project and getting it greenlit, I think fairly. Oh, there was a yap. Are the builders active?
No, that was the postman.
Oh, was it?
If it's not one, it's the other. Bloody hell, honestly.
Not one thing, it's another thing. Yeah. That project was taken then to John Higgins. Are you familiar with John Higgins' work?
I know his name in connection with Watchmen.
Yes, so he was the colourist on Watchmen. Basically, he was part of that big mid-80s British comics invasion, I guess, that slowly sort of took over at DC and in America. But he's remained a very prolific and successful and brilliant artist. Such a lovely guy as well. And just by chance, happened to run into him at a comic convention. And he liked my work on the day. He asked me to show him some of my work in my portfolio, and he liked it, and he wanted to stay in touch. I guess looking back now, that sort of meant that he had me in mind for future work, possibly. And I'd had a few projects through him, a few smaller projects. One of which was, I say smaller, one of which was for Sega Games, Sega Europe, for one of their games, Rise of Nightmares, that came out sort of, I guess, early 2010s. But eventually he got in touch to say, there's this project from Walker Books that I think you'd be good for. How do you fancy it? And, he pitched it to me, and, he said, well, it sounds terrific. We had to do a few sort of character designs and pages just to establish a look for the book with the Walker.
Yeah.
And we got the go ahead sort of a few weeks later, and and then we were working on it, and John did the layouts for that, so he did this sort of rough panel designs for the entire book on sheets of A4. You did get like sort of 10 per sheet of A4, and just lay out the shape of the panels, which panels to give emphasis, and then I'd be left to make sense of them and do fully finished art from that.
So let's break down how we tailor this for all intents and purposes. Yes. Yeah, I've got to try and tie it in somehow. So John traditionally is a colorist, right? So
he's not. He's
an illustrator as well.
Yeah, he's he's known for his actual pencils, inks, and paints. Is what he's known for. He just I think they wanted Dave Gibbons for Watchmen, and the next name that came up in terms of his palette, I guess, that he uses to colour, because John's work is very you get lots of, or at that time you did anyway, you get lots of neon and colours that shouldn't go together but do work in a comic book sort of environment. So they went straight to him for the colours, I think. So he does do colours, but his partner Sally takes on most of the colouring work for their studio now. His short answer. He's traditionally a proper, inverted commas, proper illustrator in terms of pencils, inks, doing actual strip work. Yeah.
But I guess to kind of highlight how much a collaborative effort this is. So we've got Dark Satanic Mills. I should give a little synopsis for that, and it's available. Most good independent good. Can't even get my words out today. It's available at most good independent bookshops and the big obvious one that I won't mention because they really don't need any more help. But I definitely recommend checking it out. So the synopsis for Dark Satanic Mills is set in the near future Britain. Dark Satanic Mills tracks a young girl's journey from the flooded landmarks of London to the vast, scorched and abandoned hills of the north. Much like the weather today. Framed for a murder she did not commit, the innocent and beautiful Christie has no other choice but to run for her life. Both a cautionary tale and a rip-roaring road trip, Dark Satanic Mills is altogether an intelligent, captivating and thrilling ride. The Wizard of Oz for a new generation, told in exhilarating shades of light and dark. And that's probably quite apt, that it is very much a kind of modern Wizard of Oz type story. But you have the Sedgwick brothers, who come up with the concept and come up with the story. And is it Julian or, what's the other one's name? Marcus. Who was an author, because this was their first graphic novel, right? So they've got the story. They've got the story all mapped out, possibly all written out, and they know the structure. Then they get John Higgins involved to map the layouts, to almost storyboard it, to put it into film speak, because I understand that a bit better. Yeah. And then, because there's no colouring involved, so they don't need a colourist for this one. It's all black and white. Yeah. And then they're like, right, so who's going to draw this out? And then they go to you. And you're...
Yeah, well, I think John was... they went to John first, because John's the known name kind of thing. He's the sort of A-lister of the project. And then John... I never established why John didn't take it on himself. It may have been something to do with the page rate wasn't up to his usual amount. I don't know.
Because it's about 160 pages. Which for a lot of fans of Dark Satanic Mills is not long enough. Right. But the story kind of wraps up quite neatly. But is 160 pages, is that a lot, or is that for some illustrators not enough?
Well, I mean, I don't know really. A normal sort of monthly book is 20 to 25 pages long, isn't it? But a normal graphic novel is around about the 150 page mark. Yeah. So it's, when you get a graphic novel, it's normally, for me at least, it's the best part of a year's work. So it's in terms of, is it a lot in terms of, is it going to sustain me for enough time to earn money from it?
Yeah.
Then it's enough kind of thing. If you're lucky enough to get a multi-graphic novel deal, which are very rare as far as I understand, you're set for a few years there. You've got a few years work on. Because
then I guess you'll then have a contract with the publisher, is that right? With the publishing house. So then they'll come in and draw up a contract for you and say, right, you're going to draw this thing out. How long is it going to take you? You're like, well, 160 pages is going to take me 12 months. And and then they'll work out your fee and all the rest of it. And if it's all agreed, then that's it. You're signed and that's you sorted for that period of time.
Yeah.
Able to work comfortably. You don't need to take on any side hustles or anything to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, do you know what I mean? The kind of structure of the
nuts and bolts.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah. Well, John sort of, because comic artists work in page rates. So John's page rate is different to my page rate. John's an industry, he's been an industry professional for a long, long time. And he can command a certain fee for his work. DC or Marvel go to John knowing what it's going to cost them.
Yeah.
But they want his level of expertise, so they'll pay it. So, Walker Books, traditionally, they're known for children's books. Mm-hmm. So they publish a lot of children's books. They're not really known for their graphic novel output. So I can only imagine what happened is that they decided they were going to do. Marcus went to them with this graphic novel pitch. They wanted to do it. Who should we reach out to? Oh, John Higgins is a professional we know and love. John, and they would have said to John, this is our budget. And John would have said, it's not quite right for me, but I know a fella. I imagine that's how it went. So John will have taken his fee out to do the layouts for it. I don't know what that was. I don't know what the whole budget was because Walker Books will have gone through John. He used his studio, Locomotive Studios, and it would have contracted Locomotive Studios rather than me. And I would have then I've then subcontracted to John. So it's John would have taken his cut, and the rest was mine. I guess.
Yeah. Wow. And then after Dark Satanic Mills, you went on to work with Jim on the kind of rock biography type stuff. Has he got any more of those in the pipelines? The GNR one, by the way, was absolutely fantastic. I mean, young Slash. I mean, the way you get the expressions and so on, and the way he holds his guitar. I mean, obviously you had a lot of source material and probably photography and video to draw from, right?
Yeah.
But what was your approach to that? So just take me through from, I guess, when you were first approached to that project to then actually sitting down to illustrate the thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very exciting project to be involved with. Guns N' Roses, such a massive band, obviously. So Jim had written the script to it. So it was a 144-page script, and Jim would drop in little reference photos, like in the document, in the Word document or Pages document, of what he was talking about in the panel. So if it was a scene where Slash is sat in a diner, he would just put a picture of Slash in there just to remind me who Slash was, if you need reminding who Slash is. And then I'd then sort of design the page around what Jim had described and source the relevant photography. So just Google image Slash sitting and try use that photo as reference to actually draw him, and try and get it as close to him as possible, and. There were times where, because Jim was acting also as editor as well, even though there was an editor at Omnibus, Jim was kind of on quality control duties. So there were times when he'd say this face is not quite right, or this is supposed to be Steve Adler and it looks a little bit more like a later drummer, So there were times where I'd go down a blind alley. But we got there in the end, and but it is heavily reliant, that sort of thing, on finding the right photography, finding the right pictures to draw from. Otherwise, I've been involved in projects before where, the writer said, and can you include my friend in this panel? And he'll send me like a 1x2 inch photo of his friend from a nightclub in 1972. And I'm like, you're not serious. I need more reference to go on than this one photo. And I've ended up having their friend do some modelling for me so I can get the right angles on their face. And because you need good reference, otherwise you're just not going to get near. Even though Slash is one of the most famous faces in the world, without the right reference, you can't get it right from memory. And it was crucial in this book in particular. It's not always crucial in every book, but in this book in particular, it was crucial that those likenesses were spot on, or as near to spot on as you can get them.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because the book starts off with, it's almost kind of the sort of 5 mini chapters which are setting up the scene for these youngsters before they come together to form the band. And you very quickly, just by glancing at the page, so the first sort of page for each mini chapter, you quickly get that Slash, we're talking about Axl right now, because they're not explicitly introduced that way. It's kind of like, 1970 whatever in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think that one might have been Izzy or Duff, can't remember. But anyway, but you very quickly get, that's a young Izzy, that's a young Duff, that's a young Slash. I mean, Slash is the easiest one because of his hair and stuff. But
very distinct look, isn't he?
So I mean, you did an amazing job, and I think.
Oh, thanks, man.
I think that's the thing with illustrators, is that people don't appreciate. I think a lot of the time people automatically just assume that you guys can just pick up a pen. I'm sure you've had this before as well. Like, people have shoved a pen and paper in your face and said, draw me. And it's not, it's not as straightforward as that, is it?
It's not. That just fills me with horror when people do that, as if this is the ultimate test of your ability now in front of all these people. Draw me exactly right or caricature me. And that's never been my area of interest or expertise. To do likenesses, I'm heavily reliant on likenesses, photographs, to get likenesses right in comics. And if that reference isn't there, it's going to look garbage. It's not going to look like the person. Sorry, I've forgotten your question. What were you asking me? Oh, being put under pressure on the spot, and people expecting you just to be able to
those stereotypical things. It's like with me. I was talking to a client about it last night. That I get not to the same level as you, and you're more talented than me, but when you're at events and people find, I'm quite introverted, believe it or not, and so I don't like putting myself out there talking about myself. If people start talking to me, then fine, and it comes out in conversation, but I really strive to kind of avoid it, because I don't know why, actually, but I'd much rather find out about other people than be talking about kind of what I do. I guess because I have to do what I do every single day, but also it's to avoid the stereotypes that inevitably then come, like, what do you think of my husband's style of dress? How would you change him? And they want me to do an on-the-spot sort of makeover. And I'm just like, I'm not some performing monkey. Wow. It's not, it's not as simple as that. I remember an ex-partner of mine was a physiotherapist, and as soon as they found out she was a physiotherapist, we'd be at a social gathering of some sort, and they'd immediately launch into, my elbow is playing, and I've got and this happened, and she'd be like, oh God, can I just get away from physiotherapy for 10 minutes? It's the same thing. People just want you to, like you say, they want you to perform in front of them to satisfy their own curiosity, and you just want to talk about the football or whatever, or just enjoy a drink and listen to other people, like you say. I'm the same as you. I'm not a big, I'm not very comfortable in especially large social gatherings. I do prefer just to sit on the outside there and get other people to talk and listen to them and hear what they're all about, rather than, I'm an artist and I'm currently getting this amount per page and I'm working on this currently. We are people outside of our
jobs.
Yeah, and outside of our crafts. Speaking of which, when you're not working on projects or your own stuff, what do you like to read? Or what do you like to do? Do you actually, because we're sport for choice in this modern age. When we were kids, if someone had walked through a portal and just given us 5 minutes of, come with me through this portal and I'm going to show you the world that will exist when you're ancient at the age of 40-something, because back then, if you were 40-something, you were practically dead. But if someone had showed us like a PS5 and then the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all this other stuff that's going on right now, we'd have wet ourselves. Also, probably should have called the police, because you shouldn't go with strangers. But so, and your kids obviously are sport for choice as well. But what, from all of this kind of feast of entertainment, visual content, etc., that we have today, is there anything in particular that you're a really big fan of, that you've been following?
I've got a PlayStation 4, and I've been a gamer for a few years now. I never was when I was a kid, though. I was not really into it. I was more into just drawing, really. I was a bit of a recluse, and it wasn't until sort of 12, 13, 14 where I started to go out and play football with my mates, and you kind of, this football thing, you're kind of forced into it when you're young. I don't know if this is how you remember it, but everyone's just playing football and talking about football at school.
Yeah,
all the time.
If you weren't involved in any of that, then you weren't really kind of involved in anything else. You weren't seen
you were
as
on the outside.
Yeah, you were on the outside of everything. Thankfully, I liked football. I was more into international football when I was a kid than I was club level football. I only got into club level football when I really got to my 20s. And now it's the opposite. I'm not really interested in international stuff. It's all about
same.
Yeah, all about the league and stuff for me.
Yeah, and so you kind of railroaded into football, and that's all you end up doing. So we'd be out every night playing football till it got dark, so we couldn't see the ball anymore. Every single night we were all fit as fiddle, all just so skinny, and and we could run for days, and when you leave school, that just drops off exponentially, doesn't it? That sort of the playing of the football, especially, and when you get back onto a football field, your lungs are just busted immediately.
Yeah, it's funny because your brain snaps back into, because our memory is obviously very good. So your brain and your memory snaps back into your 14, 15-year-old self.
Yeah,
but your body's obviously not.
Yeah,
and the two just
your body says no.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And then you've got stitches, and you're breaking things and ripping muscles and all the rest of it. Yeah.
So football was a big thing, and then later in life, around about the PlayStation 1 era. So not recently, but recently in terms of my lifetime. Those first Tomb Raider games.
Yeah.
Games like, I'm going to show my age here now, like the first Devil May Cry, those ones when the PlayStation 2 came out, Resident Evil, the original Resident Evils.
Yeah.
I got into those games, and that's when sort of, I was in hook, line and sinker then when I first experienced those. And then more recently on PlayStation, the game Bloodborne, I think I may have mentioned it to you on Twitter.
Yeah, you did.
Which those FromSoft games are just are really incredible. So gaming, short answer, a bit of gaming, and I also like to play badminton. I do badminton a couple of times a week now. Things have opened back up, and I went on Sunday. Actually, I was absolutely exhausted. I'm still getting over it. I'm still getting over the session. Some of the guys there, they go like 5 times a week, and I'm struggling to do 2. It's very intense. So that, and then really there's only really time left for family, really. After work, squeezing in a bit of gaming where I can, squeezing in a bit of badminton where I can, then it's just family, which is really the biggest, I'm going to say time consumer, but it's I really don't see it that way. It's I really love being around the kids. They're really good kids, and we have a great time. And of course, you don't get that time when they're young and full of energy and want to be with you all the time just doesn't last.
Yeah. Are they?
And my eldest. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, how old are they?
Yes, my eldest is 12, so she's just stepped out of that phase, where she's now sort of on her phone all the time and doesn't want to speak to me and is annoyed by my mere presence in the room, whereas the younger one, who's 8, is still very much in that sort of, she's all about daddy and wants to be silly with daddy and all that. And of course you love that as a parent. You want to just be silly with them all and be with them all the time. But again, she's going to be 9 next, and then it's all a slow sort of separation as she discovers boys and makeup and all the rest of it. So it's I appreciate the time I've had with them, but it breaks my heart that they're drifting away from me now.
Yeah, you want to kind of slow time down as much as you can, right?
Yeah,
so they kind of stay younger. And have they obviously the 12-year-old, because she doesn't care about you anymore. But have you been able to enjoy some of the stuff that we're quite privileged to have nowadays, like the Marvel movies and that kind of thing? Yeah. Have they got into any of the kind of superhero stuff?
Yes, I think so. And I again, it's difficult to say whether it would have been that way were it not for me. But they know about Captain Marvel, the Brie Larson version of Captain Marvel. They know about her. They know about. Let me think of her. They know about She-Ra. Of course, she's made a recent comeback on Netflix. But before that, they knew about She-Ra.
Oh wow!
Because I've shown them the old TV show, the old one from the 80s. And we're a fan of She-Ra even before the new Netflix show. So I mean. Same with Star Wars, they know who Princess Leia is, and Princess Leia really is a character from the 80s. Really, I know she's made a recent comeback in the more recent films, but that they when they saw the more recent films, they knew who she was. They enjoyed that character, I think, as much as I did because they were familiar with the old films. Now, had I not discovered comics via my poorly foot as a kid, there's no telling whether they would have discovered Star Wars if it weren't for my influence there. It's my life was set on a trajectory as a result of my bad foot, and discovered comics and movies. A certain kind of movie. And if I'd not had that bad foot, maybe my kids wouldn't know who She-Ra was before the Netflix series, So I think there is an influence there from me, that for sure. But I think they're my kids. They would have probably had that proclivity for that kind of material anyway. Yeah. Probably.
And are either of them showing any kind of signs of any kind of aptitude for art? Taking after Dad? Yeah, a little. I mean, I think the eldest more than the youngest, although the eldest is more sort of inclined to do fashion design and that kind of thing. She's more into that side of things. And you look at their art side by side, and obviously there's the obvious age difference thing. But Edith's more about matching colours and patterns and beautiful flowing lines and dresses and all that. And Imogen, the youngest one, she's more about black, scratchy patches of ink like I am. So there's this, and I think that's a naturally developed thing they've grown into. But Imogen definitely draws more like me. The youngest one. Yeah. And Edith draw, because Mum's an art teacher. Oh, wow.
Who also did fashion design at college. So you can see how Edith's, what she's developing into and what Imogen's developing into. And if you just look at the two kids, Imogen looks more like me and Edith looks more like her mum. So it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like genetically, she's sort of the artist she's becoming. which is like her mum, and Imogen the same. She's like me, and she draws like me. So weird. I mean, not weird, really, very understandable, but it's surprising.
Yeah.
It's surprising to discover it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I guess the thing that you can hope for as a parent, other than protecting your kids and setting them up to live a good life, is that they become an echo of you in some way, right? And it's great that both of them, hopefully, if they keep it up, and the older one doesn't, suddenly start wanting to become an influencer or something, because that seems to be the number one sort of wanted profession amongst young people these days.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Fingers crossed.
So I've got to go back to graphic novels again. What did you do for DC and Dark Horse? Because these are two massive houses, right?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Right. Well, Dark Horse, gosh, that was a complex story, but basically, I've been doing some work for, and I forget the name of the publisher right now, but it was for John Freeman. I don't know if you've heard of John Freeman. He's a sort of veteran editor in the UK comics industry. He did the editing on the old Marvel UK stuff when that came out a few years ago. And I met him at a comic convention, and he sort of saw my portfolio again, and I then just spent the next year or so harassing him for work, saying, have you got anything for me, John? And eventually he caved in and gave me this these couple of strips to draw. And through him, I met a writer called Jim Alexander, who also a 2000 AD veteran, was pitching stuff to Dark Horse at the time, and got me to do sort of a sample page of one of his scripts, and that put me in touch then with the editors at Dark Horse, and the rest followed on from there. I again spent the next year or so harassing Jim Gibbons at Dark Horse to send me some work, and eventually he caved in, and I got a project out of him. But as is often the case, the contact you establish after years of harassing them, just move on to another job, and then you're left sort of with no contact at Dark Horse. I pinged Patrick Thorpe a LinkedIn message just before the pandemic. Just started to sort of get a bit of a rapport going with him, and then the pandemic hit, and everything just stopped. Yeah. Everything stopped, including me working on pitch material to Dark Horse. So with that, I only ever got one project from Dark Horse, and Jim Gibbons left as the short story there. So it kind of died, and then the pandemic hit, and I didn't sort of work on the relationship with Patrick Thorpe, and I do mean to keep going back to him and saying, I've still got this project. Sorry, I've not seen you in such a while. It's it can be difficult to maintain relationships, especially when you've got a family as well.
Yeah.
Homeschooling was happening. That kind of got in the way as well. Although I'm very appreciative for that time, that extra time I got with my kids over that year. It did mean that illustration took a back seat sometimes more than it ought to have, really.
Yeah, listen, I don't think it matters what you do or what industry you're in. The pandemic really made it difficult to maintain new relationships that we were trying to build literally just before it hit, because I got my business, growing my clientele, relies on referrals, recommendations, intros, etc. And I had a whole bunch that I just started conversations with, and then lockdown hit, and then it was hard to get a hold of people because these guys are working from 6:30 to whatever. I mean, this is a corporate world. And they don't have time for anything else, and also they're working from home, they're not in the offices anymore, so it's even unless you've got a mobile number, it's even more difficult to reach them. So then LinkedIn comes into play, which is what you've been using to great and lesser effect, and I have as well. But then everybody's getting attacked on LinkedIn. I mean, I get so many messages every single day from people trying to sell me SEO services and this and that.
All right.
And now that the world is sort of starting to wake up and come back, it's kind of, it is difficult to go back to those people to say, hey, because crikey, it's September now. I mean, we're coming up to almost 2 years soon.
Yeah.
And people aren't remembering those initial conversations. You have to start all over again. And then if people have moved on in the meantime, that's it. You kind of left where'd you pick it up from? You're left in kind of no man's land, right?
Yeah, very, very difficult. It's a curveball that everyone's had to deal with, obviously, and I guess there will be a certain level of empathy there when you do, but it does derail your plan. It has derailed a lot of people's plans.
Yeah.
Including me. It's been tough. Similar story for DC when I worked on that job came through John Higgins, and it was only a few pages inside an existing book. It was for Vertigo, the old Vertigo label that since got they did away with it, didn't they, DC?
Yeah.
But the editor there, Ellie Pyle, she moved on. I was harassing her for more work for the best part of a year, and she suddenly just was not there anymore, and I got no other contact. It's very, very frustrating. I suppose it's any freelancer suffers the same thing. Fortunately for me, I've had enough recurring work come back and keep me in food and electricity.
Yeah, which is obviously the main thing. I literally just this morning ordered a hardback copy of I think it's the 30th anniversary edition of James O'Barr's The Crow, the original.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Because I was a massive fan of that comic when I was in my teens. Very troubled teen.
Were you a goth?
I wasn't. I was one of those at college where... So college you had, in the social room, that was split between the uber trendy, popular kids and then the kind of, sort of in-betweeners. And then at the back of the college, round the back, literally by the bike shed, you had, the goths and, those types that we were always smoking cigarettes and swigging vodka and stuff like that, and didn't really talk to.
Oh, so you did move in those circles.
So I knew everyone, including the outsiders who had no friends that used to hang out in the corridors. Because then in the canteen, it was all the ethnic minority kids, to be politically correct, but basically all the Asian and black kids would hang out there away from the white kids that were in all the other areas of college. So it was I grew up in Croydon.
And was that by choice or by sort of force?
I don't know. I think everyone was just a bit prejudiced and suspicious of each other. different groups of, whether it is ethnicity or social standing or whatever. I don't know. It was really weird looking back, but I used to know everybody. So I used to hang out and float around all over the place.
Yeah, right.
So I wasn't a goth, but having had quite a tricky upbringing, I was quite, a volatile, troubled sort of teenager. And I didn't really, I couldn't identify, it was really hard for me to be able to work out who I was. Does that make any sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, it's not something I can empathise with because, I'm a white guy. I'm a middle-aged white guy who just gets no prejudice from anyone, other than the usual, oh, is this guy all right or not sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for me to I understand what you're saying, but and back in my school there was something like, gosh, it must have been like sort of maybe nearly 2,000 kids in the school, and maybe not quite as many as that, but there were 2 black people.
Yeah.
And they did used to get some abuse is the only word for it, come their way because of the colour of their skin. And they got nowhere to go. They got they were the only black kids there. And looking back, it must have been. It didn't occur to me at the time at all. It was just part of the norm.
Yeah.
It's part of the culture, I guess. But you know, it must have been, you know, psychologically load bearing for them to have to go through that.
Yeah.
Must have been.
Yeah, I totally. I remember when I was at secondary school, I used to just get beaten up all the time. I've joked about it before on previous episodes, but you know, looking back, I mean, if it was my kid that went through what I went through, I'd be horrified. You know, I'd feel like I'd failed as a parent. But yeah. So anyway, so I had identity issues. You know, always trying to sort of fit in with all these different types of people, and in the end you just end up being lonelier than if you just kind of, you know, just chose an area and just went and stuck with that group, right? So I used to just float around kind of, you know, detached, and I don't know why that particular comic just struck a chord with me. I think firstly because it was so different, you know, it was all black and white, and the story came from a place of tragedy, because obviously he'd experienced tragedy in his own life, and then sort of all that pain just came out on the page in that story.
Yeah, right.
And then it was made even more real and visceral by that Brandon Lee movie that came out, which I think was 1993. Because I remember I remember the posters for it, and the tagline, the review tagline, was 5 stars, even darker than the bat. Because we were only a couple years off of out of Batman Returns and Batman, Tim Burton's ones, which were for the time quite dark.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that always, and I used to, if it was available at the local library, I would always rent it out and just read it and reread it. And as an adult, I was just kind of going through I've got some. Actually, I'll tell you if you're interested.
Yeah, I am.
Of course you're going to say that.
No, I like comics.
Yeah, well, I've got... Oh my God, classic. Check this out, right? So I recently reread... Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I still hear and see you. Yeah, you just broke up slightly, but I can you're still there.
Yeah, I've got these stupid AirPods, but because my ears don't have the... I need to find out a name, but that bit doesn't go up like that. I'm basically, anyone who's listening, you can't see this, but I've basically shoved my ear in the camera at Mark, and I'm explaining something that he really doesn't need to know. But it means that these things keep slipping out. So if you can't hear me, it's because it's slipped out enough that the AirPod thinks I've taken the damn thing off. It's really irritating. Right, so I have got... So anyway, so I ordered the hardback of that, and it comes on Friday, and I can't wait to get my hands on it again. And apparently it's got like an extra 40 pages that he's put in to it. But I mean,
what, of comic strip or what is the content there? What is that extra 40 pages?
Illustrations, and I think he might have added
character designs.
Might have added to the story. No, actual story.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
like comic strip. Yeah.
I might have a look at that. Yeah.
So anyway, so I've got some books here that I haven't read yet. This one I actually did read a very long time ago. So this is Batman: The Long Halloween.
Yeah, I've never read it. Yeah, it's considered a classic of the genre, isn't it? Yeah.
All-Star Superman.
Oh yeah, is that the Frank Quitely? Yeah.
Yeah, Frank Quitely. Haven't read it yet. I probably bought that like 3 years ago. It's been sat on the shelf.
I've got a to read pile as well. That's as long as you
and then Superman Birthright.
Oh yes.
Which again, I've not actually even opened this.
Mark Waid and Lionel Yu, classic, absolute classic, yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting into those. But what I'm doing is I'm just building up a little reading list of business stuff, and then of this stuff, which is completely away from what I do for a living. Personal development, all that kind of stuff. It's just stuff I can get lost in. Because we've just gotten suddenly very, very busy again. And creating space is just really, really important for me, as I'm sure it is for you as well. Because again, as creators, I don't know what you're like, but you know, when I start to feel that life is getting too chaotic and so on, it puts like a mental block on my creativity. I just can't.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't think or do anything, so I need to just take myself completely out of it for a while.
Yeah.
Just do something else that's just nothing to do with my day job. and then eventually I kind of have a little reset, and then I can kind of come back, and the creative channels.
Yeah, very similar. Often I, just because of deadlines and workload, I often try and push through that, and you can really tell in the work. It's really it's a lot flatter. It's a lot less. You can see the imagination tanks have run dry.
Yeah.
On some of the work, and sadly you just still got to push it out because you've got so much on, and whilst there's a certain amount of regret and. I find myself sort of often saying, I'm so sorry about this. I was under a lot of pressure there. But that's comics. You kind of got to just push the work out and hope that people read it and just flip past and don't notice it, kind of thing. But I definitely suffer from it as well. Yeah.
How do you? Other than spending time with the kids, but how do you create space for yourself when things start getting a bit too pressure cookery?
Well, honestly, it is difficult because if it's not work, it's kids really, and to create time to get to throw myself into a video game, for instance, the kids have to be doing something else, So very occasionally they'll be. They might try a dance class or they might be going around to a friend's house or something like that. You really, as a parent, you've really got to seize those moments and just take yourself out of the equation completely and do something to recharge your batteries. Just to throw, like you say, to throw yourself into something else, to take your mind away from it for a little while, so you can go again. Because we're all on the go more often than not, aren't we? And whilst you're on the go, you're okay, but the grind can just wear you down. So sometimes you need to sort of identify where those pockets of opportunity crop up, so you can take them. Otherwise, you do just get ground down. I mean, I remember just before lockdown one, Catherine and I decided we were going to have a trip to York because we'd not done it for years. We'd not been away together for years, just me and her. We'd not even been on our own together for years. And your relationship can really just become about who's getting the kids now. I'm going to get the kids here, I'm going to hand them over to you here so I can work, and then I'll take them again at the end so you can get back to work. And it just becomes your relationship almost just disappears because you're so busy elsewhere, So, and Edith, we've had Edith for 12 years now, and we only took this trip a couple of years just before lockdown one. So that's the first time we'd gone, hang on a minute, we just need to come off the gas here just for a minute, just to take a little time for our own sanity's sake, for the relationship's sake, So it's. I sound like I'm really sort of anti-kids. I'm not. I love every second I get with the kids. I love spending time with them, and it's my number one source of joy in my life. But you still need those pockets of time to come away from it and reset, like you say. Just take some time for yourself every now and again. And video games and badminton. It provides that for me, it's something else where I can go and be with different people, do something different, and just forget about the rest of it for an hour or two, at a time. Yeah,
that's it. Fine for me, video games. I've got so many lined up. Don't worry, I'm not going to bring those over and show them all to you that are still in shrink wrap. But all the story-based stuff, or the stuff that is a longer play. I very rarely even install them because I can't. I mean, like the latest, I'm going to show off now, but Miles Morales on the PS5 looks stunning. Yeah. And I've only played like the first 10 minutes of it because for me I don't have the time to play a story-based game. So for me, it's stuff like, I'm just hooked on FIFA. So we were talking ironically about football. The way I still get to experience playing football for myself, not the same thing, obviously, but is playing FIFA Ultimate Team. I can jump in online, go find someone in the world to go and have a match against, and it's over in 20 minutes, and then I can get back to doing something else. But for
it's a small chunk of time you can put into it and walk away from it.
Yeah, that's it. But when we were younger and we had things like Xboxes and, PlayStation 2s and that sort of thing, I remember getting up late on a Sunday, going and grabbing some food, and then sometimes being in my room for the rest of the day. I mean, what a waste of life. But
it seems like you've got so much of it when you're that young, though, doesn't it? It seems like it's an endless river in front of you, and
exactly.
When you get to, I mean, it first occurred to me that I was mortal when I got to about 37, 38, something like that. When I suddenly just went, whoa, that's a higher number than I was expecting it to be at this time, and suddenly you're like, oh gosh, I'm getting older now. So and then it's just a rapid decline from there.
But it's like, if you think of life like an hourglass, when you turn an hourglass upside down and start the sand running through at the beginning, it seems to be running through quite slowly. And then as it gets to the sort of just after the halfway point, then the sand starts to run much faster. And then when it gets to the last 20%, it just whips through like that. That's exactly kind of what life is like. As you get older, the sand just starts running through the hourglass so fast. You blink and you're like, we're already saying to people, COVID hasn't helped because it's taken a year and a half out of our lives. But still, it's like, I mean, for kids, it must have dragged on. I remember when I was a kid, summer holidays were 6 weeks and I hated them because they would just last forever. It felt like years. Christmas only being a week away still felt like an age away. Whereas, we just seem to keep running from one Christmas, one birthday to another, like bang, 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 bang.
It's crazy.
Mental.
It's really crazy. Yeah, you're like, oh, it's my birthday again. I'm now in my 40s. And time just keeps, like you say, it's like that hourglass where it's just dropping out of the bottom at an exponential rate. It's and you can't keep up with it.
Yeah. What would your final big question for you? What would your dream gig be?
Oh gosh!
If you could get a phone call after this recording out of the blue from an unknown caller, and they ring up and they say, "Hi, is this Marc Olivent?" And you're like, "Yes, it is. Who's this?" What would they then go on to say? What would that call is your perfect gig? Describe it to me.
Yeah, I try and I want to sound interesting here, but it's really not complicated. What I would love. It's just I just love to do a Batman. It's that's it for me. Well, I don't the fact that I haven't done it yet. In fact, actually, Batman was in that DC project I did. He made a brief cameo in that, so I have actually, for all intents and purposes, drawn Batman for money for DC. So I have done that. But dream gig would be either a Batman graphic novel or a small stint, actually whatever size stint on a Batman book. Just because. I mean, it used to be Spider-Man when I was younger. It was my sort of favourite guy. But as I've got older, it's Batman. So I'm sorry that's a really uncomplicated and uninteresting answer. But that literally would be it. Either that or a Star Wars comic. One or the other. I mean, I think Batman, just because he is comics, his his birthplace, his rightful place is comics. And he is such an iconic comic book character that I think that would be the ultimate. So I know that's a very ordinary answer, and I wish I could be more interesting.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think that would be it.
But I can see, given your style, how Batman doesn't surprise me as an answer.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Because your style lends itself, you're very much, like you described before, splodges of black on, scratches of black on white.
Yes.
And Batman is just exactly that. I mean, you take the Frank Miller stuff, perfect. Yeah. So Star Wars is funny because you're right, it started obviously in the cinema, but it seems the way that a lot of purists are agreeing that the future for Star Wars should really be back on the page again. I mean, Dark Horse had a great run with Star Wars back in the day.
Yeah, they did it for years, didn't they? Yeah. I just found an old Cam Kennedy Dark Empire book in one of these bags of comics I've got down here, and I can't wait to get back into it because his style is so distinct and beautiful. But that book must be from like the mid-90s, something like that. That's how long they've been doing it, and of course. It's recently switched over to Disney, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, Disney basically owns just about everything now. So, I'm really looking forward to the new Matt Reeves Batman movie.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
Me too, yeah. There's a lot of cynicism out there about it. I don't really. I think it's to do with the casting of Robert Pattinson, as if he's some sort of romantic teen heartthrob, and that's all.
But it's not though. That's people who are ignorant. They haven't seen some of the really gritty work that he's done.
He's a great actor. He's a great actor.
Absolutely brilliant. I think for me, he's done enough to get away from the stereotype of Edward from the Twilight movies. Yes, I've seen all of them. Anyone who's listening and, right now is hammering on their phone to text me to take the mick. I don't care. I have seen them. The first one was great and the ones after that were rubbish. Right. But there was a movie he did called Good Time with... it was made by I think they're called the Safdie brothers. But it's a small, low budget... he's got a brother who's got, I think, mental disabilities, and basically, I'm not going to give anything away because it will spoil it, but it's one of those films that is so visceral it stays with you afterwards. I definitely recommend checking it out. But when I heard he was cast as Batman, obviously the assumption, and it is true because that's what they've said since, is that he's going to be a younger version of the character. Yeah. But I was made up. I was like, what a great casting. And he's absolutely brilliant. He's not replacing anyone because I think Ben Affleck is still kind of running concurrently because I think he's due to make an appearance in the...
I think they've got two versions going at the minute, haven't they?
Yeah, because he's going to make an appearance in the Flash movie. This is now turning into my other podcast, Play Paul's Turn. But yeah, no, I'm absolutely made up for that. And I saw the newer trailer yesterday, and
Oh, there's a new trailer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's fan made or what, but anyway, it looks superb. I can't wait for that.
It'll be it looks like it's going to be a good film. Yeah, they've taken a really even darker tone than previous movies.
But that's how it should be, right? Don't you think Batman should be like that? I didn't like I did at the time because I was younger and stupid, but Joel Schumacher, when he came in, looking back on those films now, they're not Batman at all.
I don't know, there's a bit of a school of thought that's sort of becoming quite apologetic towards them these days. Because, if you really want to talk about taking Batman back to his roots, then it is all the stupid stuff, all the silly Riddler games and traps, and the Joker with the acid in his flower, and Hugo Strange, and all those great 60s villains. His roots are in comic books, and I think in terms of the films, Joel Schumacher's films are probably, they're a lot closer to the comic books than Christopher Nolan's version. So there is a school of thought that sort of, is revisiting those Joel Schumacher ones with an eye on, Batman's roots in his comics, and they are closer to that, and they're closer to the TV show. The TV show goes in a slightly, it pushes that camp edge slightly too far for my tastes. But again, we're talking about a show from the 60s, so it's hard to be too cruel to it, but I think there is room, especially with Batman, to explore that comic book side to it. For me, I love the Nolan films, and they're undeniably well crafted films, but they just go towards that realistic feel too much for me, just too much.
Yeah, but you see, I like that.
Yeah, no, I did. I enjoyed the films. I like Christian Bale. Heath Ledger was just unbelievable in that role of the Joker. But I mean, you could have those films could have just not been Batman. They could have just been a cop and a bad guy, and they would have still turned out the same way. Because they were so grounded in reality. They were so set against the backdrop of the real world that they were just too far removed from the comic books for me. I loved them. They're great films. I like those actors. I like that director. But they just went too far in that direction for me.
Yeah, see my approach would be, I wrote a book once.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, like full-blown novel.
Oh.
Never published. What happened was, it was late. It started off when I was about 14 years old, and I finally finished it when I was about 16. It probably started off when I was 12. Right. But basically, we read The Monkey's Paw in class, which was like, some guy gets some monkey's paw and then it gives him 3 wishes, and then he makes his 3 wishes, but each wish doesn't come out the way, he suffers loss and, his wife gets murdered. Well, I can't remember the damn story, but anyway, you get the gist, right?
Yeah.
And so we were then given an assignment to write a 2-page story based on a wish going wrong.
Yeah, right.
And I never handed that piece of homework in, because my 1 page had turned into about 47 pages by that time.
Right, okay.
And so I finished it about 3 years later and finally gave it to my English Lang teacher, and he basically put it as part of my final coursework for my GCSEs. And I got one of the first A pluses were never heard of then, but I was granted an A+.
Right.
It wasn't a thing. Like all these A stars that they give out willy-nilly these days, that we didn't have that back when we were doing O-levels and GCSEs. Right. So I was granted an A+ for English Lang, and he said to me, so keep it up, keep writing, and I just didn't. Right. But I have all these story ideas going on in my head, and I have a treatment for Batman, which is kind of, it takes the approach, basically for me, it's trying to get into all the tragedy and loss that he suffered as a young child, while at the same time you've got this sort of contradiction with tragedy and loss, but he's got everything he could ever want in the world because he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
But then how twisted do you have to be to go taking revenge in the dead of night dressed as a bat?
Quite twisted.
You have to go to a really dark place. So there's something quite mental and psychotic about that. So I think if I actually started to sit down and put pen to paper or start typing, my take would be a little bit of the realism of Nolan with some of the absurdity of Burton.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the violence of the Ben Affleck Batman.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, that'd be good. That sounds like a good mix, actually, for that character.
Yeah. So if ever I get round to actually starting this treatment, then, me and you could collaborate on the graphic novel.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you need an illustrator for that, then, just, you know where I am.
Exactly. That's it. So, let's see. Let's see if I can work my day job into a 3-day-a-week gig so I can start writing again.
That sounds amazing.
Anyway, look. Anyone who's listening out there that's got any connection to DC, to the new Batman movie, because there's got to be a graphic novel series based on that, I'm sure Mark would love to hear from you. So please hit him up. I'm going to search through my network.
And if you need a writer, there's one sat here just with an idea ready to go to.
Exactly. I've just given it away, so someone will probably take. It'll probably get bought by. It'll get bought by Netflix because they'll buy any old shit. Anyway, look.
Every listener needs to sign an NDA.
Yeah. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I had so much fun with that. Everyone who's listening, please check out Mark's work. If you've got any appreciation for comics, for graphic novels, for art, for the work that illustrators like Mark do, please go check his work out. I will put links to his work and where you can buy it in the show notes, and I'll also link to his website as well, because he is also available for what do you call them, private commissions?
Yeah, commissions, or yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you're too kind. You're a very lovely man.
Thank you. So are you. That's why we know each other. So thank you very much, Mark, and we'll hopefully catch up again very soon. Have you had a good time?
It's been amazing. Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been brilliant.
Brilliant. We'll start working on that Batman collaboration soon.
Excellent.
Take care.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you so much for joining Mark and I today. They say variety is the spice of life, and Tailoring Talk is no exception. Mark, I'm so proud to add to a roster of guests from such diverse and varied backgrounds. Next week is going to be no exception. If you loved today's episode, then I've got another podcast that you might really enjoy. I'd love to introduce the Play, Pause, Turn podcast with John Evans, Amy and Alex Hansford, Mark Holmes, and yours truly, Roberto Rivilla. We are TV, movie and comic book geeks through and through, and we share our thoughts on the latest releases, old favourites and interesting topics every fortnight. You can find the show at the website playpauseturn.show or download and subscribe wherever you like to get your podcasts. As ever, if you're enjoying the show, please give us some feedback in the form of a rating and a review if your podcast platform allows. It really helps other people to find the show, introduces us to new listeners, and who knows, you might just help someone at the time they need it the most. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week with an amazing guest all the way from New Jersey, USA. Can't wait to introduce you to her. In the meantime, whatever you get up to in the coming week, have an amazing time. We're going to be kicking off our Bond Daniel Craig movie marathon tonight, and so keep an eye out on your podcast platform. Make sure you hit subscribe because we've got some bonus 007 inspired episodes coming your way in the next few days. I'm so excited for No Time to Die, and I can't wait to share my thoughts on the Daniel Craig saga with you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. See you on the next one.